Welcome to our deep dive into...
Good one.
Yeah, this is a fascinating topic, I think.
Yeah.
So today we're exploring how the world is figuring out how to make all that sunshine and wind actually work for our power grids.
Right.
You know, we talk about renewable energy all the time, but it's not just about building more solar panels and wind turbines.
Absolutely.
So we've got a fantastic source for this, the International Energy Agency, IEA. They've got a great report that came out in September 2024 titled Integrating Solar and Wind, Global Experience and Emerging Challenges.
Love the IEA.
Yeah, they do really great work.
Yeah.
And I think our mission today is to kind of break down how different places are tackling this.
Right.
What's working and maybe what's not working so well, and really what it all means for you, the listener.
Yeah.
No matter your level of technical expertise.
Right.
So you don't have to be an engineer to follow along here.
Hopefully not.
Right.
So I think it's really exciting what's happening right now.
Yeah.
We're seeing a global shift in how we make electricity.
Well, let's jump right into some of these numbers from the report.
Hopefully.
I mean, it's really incredible.
Yeah.
The IEA report says that between 2018 and 2023, the amount of solar and wind power more than doubled worldwide.
Yeah.
And their share of global electricity almost doubled too.
It's amazing.
It's really incredible. And then at COP228 last year,
Oh, yeah.
a whopping 132 countries committed to tripling renewable power capacity by 2030.
Huge.
That's huge.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And it really highlights the urgency
Yeah.
of getting this integration piece right.
Right.
Because the report actually suggests that if we don't figure this out, we could be wasting up to 15% of that potential solar and wind energy by 2030.
So hold on. So you're telling me that if I'm, investing in solar panels for my home,
Yeah.
I might only be getting 85% of the benefit because the grid can't handle it.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
It's like throwing money away.
Yeah. And it's not just about building more solar panels and wind turbines. It's about making sure the entire system can use that clean energy effectively.
Okay. So then the question is, why is integration so tricky?
Yeah.
I mean, we think about electricity. We flip a switch, the lights come on.
Yeah, right.
What's the big deal?
Well, I think a good analogy is traditional power plants are like reliable old friends.
Yeah.
They just keep chugging along.
Yeah.
Solar and wind are a bit more like that friend who's always up for an adventure.
Okay.
You never know quite what you're going to get.
They're a little more spontaneous.
Right. They're variable depending on the sunshine and the wind blowing.
So how do we make sure the lights stay on when our power source is a bit, let's say, temperamental?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
And the IEA report breaks down this process into 6 phases of integrating variable renewable energy, or they call it VRE.
VRE.
Think of it like levels in a video game. Most countries are in the early stages, but many are expected to level up by 2030.
Okay. I like the video game analogy. Makes it a little bit more interesting.
Keeps it interesting.
So what do these levels actually mean for, say, my electric bill?
Great question.
Yeah.
So the first 3 phases are all about making smarter use of what we already have.
Okay.
No need to tear everything down and start over.
Phew. That's a relief.
Yeah. So we're talking about tweaks and adjustments.
So what kind of tweaks are we talking about?
So the report highlights a few proven strategies that are already being used by systems in phase 2 or higher.
Okay.
One is optimizing dispatch,
which
basically means using the cheapest sources of electricity first.
Makes sense.
And guess what? That often means renewables.
Okay.
Since their fuel, sunshine, and wind is free.
Right. Instead of firing up a coal plant automatically, we prioritize the solar farm that's already generating power.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. What else?
Another key strategy is improving forecasting. Okay. Imagine if we could predict not only the weather, but also exactly how much electricity everyone will need.
At any given time.
At any given time.
Wow. That's like a superpower.
It is kind of a superpower.
Yeah. Do we even need a crystal ball for that?
Maybe not a crystal ball.
Okay.
But sophisticated algorithms and data analysis are getting us pretty close.
Okay.
And better forecasting means we can plan ahead and manage the variability of renewables more effectively.
So it's all about having better information to work with.
Exactly.
Okay. I'm starting to see how this works. What other tricks do we have up our sleeve?
Well, think about those big factories that use tons of electricity with something called industrial demand response. They can adjust their energy use strategically to help balance the grid.
Okay.
So, for example, if it's a super sunny day and solar power is abundant, they might ramp up production. So it's kind of like a giant dance where everyone coordinates their moves.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
To keep the energy flowing smoothly.
So we're all working together.
Right.
Okay. And the IEA report highlights that these are all proven strategies being used successfully around the world.
Exactly.
That's encouraging. But I have to ask, what happens when we move beyond these initial phases?
Yeah.
Things have got to get more complicated, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. As we climb higher up that renewable integration ladder into phases 4 through 6, we face a new set of challenges.
Okay.
2 big ones.
Yeah.
Our system stability and flexibility across all timescales.
Whoa. Okay, hold on. Let's break that down. What do you mean by system stability? I thought the grid was, stable.
Traditionally, the grid has relied on those big power plants to act like anchors, keeping everything steady.
Yeah.
As we shift to more renewables, we need to find new ways to maintain that stability and prevent blackouts.
Right. Especially when the sun sets or the wind dies down.
Exactly.
So it's not enough to just generate clean energy.
Right.
We need to make sure the system can handle it without falling apart.
Without falling apart.
Oh, okay. And what about flexibility across all timescales? That sounds pretty complex.
It is complex.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to balance supply and demand.
Okay.
Not just every hour, but over days, weeks, even entire seasons.
Wow.
It's like a giant puzzle where the pieces keep changing shape.
Okay. I'm starting to see how this renewable energy transition is more than just plugging in a few solar panels.
Right.
What solutions do we have for these higher level challenges?
Yeah.
Give me some hope here.
Don't worry. The IEA report offers plenty of reasons to be optimistic.
Okay.
It showcases several exciting technologies that can help us navigate these trickier phases.
All right. Let's hear it. What kind of tech is going to save the day?
One innovation that's getting a lot of attention is grid-forming converters.
Grid-forming converters.
These are devices that allow renewables and batteries to act like those big, stable power plants we were talking about.
Okay.
It's like giving them a superpower.
Superpowered clean energy. I like the sound of that.
Right.
But before we get too deep into the tech, let's take a break and come back in part 2 to explore those solutions in more detail.
Sounds good. So, as I was reading through the IEA report, one thing that really caught my eye was this concept of curtailment.
Curtailment. Okay, I'll admit that doesn't sound very exciting.
No, it doesn't sound exciting.
What is that?
But it's important.
Okay.
Basically, curtailment is when we intentionally reduce the output of solar and wind power.
Okay. So we're like putting limits on it.
Yeah, you could think of it that way.
Even when it could be producing more.
Even when they're capable of producing more.
Wait, why would we ever do that?
Yeah, it seems counterproductive.
Especially when we're trying to transition to clean energy.
Right.
It seems like we should be using all of it.
Well, there are a couple of reasons why this happens.
Okay.
Sometimes the grid just can't handle the full amount of power coming in from a solar or wind farm.
It's like trying to pour a gallon of water into a pint glass.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's just going to overflow.
Okay. So curtailment is like a safety valve to prevent the grid from overloading.
Exactly.
Okay.
And sometimes curtailment happens when demand for electricity is low.
Okay. Like in the middle of the night.
Like in the middle of the night when most people are sleeping.
Yeah.
We can't store massive amounts of electricity on the grid, at least not yet.
Right.
So sometimes it makes more sense to curtail some renewable generation than to shut down other power plants, only to have to start them up again later.
Okay. So it's like choosing the lesser of two evils.
Yeah, you could think of it that way.
Okay. But it still feels like we're leaving clean energy on the table.
Right.
Especially when we hear so much about the urgency of climate change.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. And, in systems with low levels of renewable energy, high curtailment rates can be a sign that we haven't invested enough in things like grid upgrades and energy storage.
Okay.
But what's interesting is that in systems with very high levels of renewables, some curtailment can actually be the most cost-effective solution.
Hold on, you're telling me that sometimes it's cheaper to waste clean energy?
It can be.
Yeah.
How does that make sense?
Let's say it's a sunny afternoon and solar panels are generating more electricity than the region needs at that moment.
Okay.
If we had tons of cheap and efficient batteries, we could store that excess energy.
Okay.
But large-scale battery storage is still expensive.
So sometimes it's cheaper to curtail some solar energy at midday than to shut down other power plants and then fire them up again later when the sun sets.
Exactly.
That is interesting.
Oh, okay.
The IEA report also talks about these things called connection queues. What are those all about?
Yeah, connection queues are like waiting lists.
For renewable energy projects that want to plug into the grid.
Got it.
The report found that globally, over 1,500 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity.
That's a lot.
We're stuck in these queues in 2023.
Wow. That's a lot of clean energy waiting in the wings. Why the bottleneck? Are we just not building enough transmission lines?
Well, it's a combination of factors. One is the sheer volume of new solar and wind projects being proposed.
Okay.
As the cost of renewables continues to plummet.
Yeah, it's getting cheaper and cheaper.
More and more developers are jumping on board.
I mean, that's a good problem to have, right? Too much clean energy.
It is, in a way.
Yeah.
But it means we have to scramble to make sure the grid can handle this influx of new power sources. And yes, upgrading transmission lines and substations is a big part of that. But it's also about streamlining the connection process itself.
Okay.
You know, it can take years for a new renewable energy project to get approved and connected to the grid.
Wow. So frustrating for those developers.
Yeah, it's a long process.
Who are ready to go.
It's exactly.
Is anyone working on solutions?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The IEA report highlights some promising initiatives.
Yeah.
In the U.S., for example, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, is trying to make the connection process more efficient and transparent.
Okay. What kind of changes are they making? Give us the details.
Well, one key change is moving away from a first-come, first-served model to a first-ready, first-served approach.
Okay. So you have to be ready to go.
You got to be ready. This means that projects that have secured their permits and financing get priority, rather than just those who submitted their applications first.
So it's like rewarding the developers who have done their homework.
Exactly.
And are serious about building their projects.
They're ready to go.
Okay, that seems fair. What other strategies are being used to tackle those connection queues?
Another innovative approach is cluster studies. Instead of evaluating each project individually, grid operators can group projects in the same geographic area and assess their combined impact on the grid.
So it's like a bulk discount for grid upgrades.
Exactly. It's a more efficient way to plan and build the infrastructure needed to integrate multiple renewable energy projects at once.
Okay, I'm liking all these innovative solutions. It sounds like we're making progress, even though there are still challenges. But now I'm really curious about those super-powered grid-forming converters you mentioned earlier. Tell me more.
Yeah, they really are a game changer. Remember how we were talking about the grid needing to be stable?
Yes.
Well, traditional power plants with their big spinning turbines have always provided that stability.
Right.
But solar and wind power don't work the same way.
So how do we get that stability from sources that depend on the whims of nature?
That's where grid-forming converters come in. They essentially allow renewable energy sources and batteries to act like those big, stable power plants.
Okay.
Providing essential grid services.
Okay.
Like inertia, voltage support, and frequency regulation.
Okay, I'm going to need you to break that down a bit. I know these are all important, but I'm not an electrical engineer. What do those terms actually mean?
Yeah, you're right. It can get a bit technical.
Yeah.
Think of inertia as the resistance of a spinning object to changes in speed.
Okay.
In the grid, this inertia helps to smooth out fluctuations in frequency. It's like a shock absorber.
Okay.
Preventing sudden changes in the flow of electricity.
And traditionally, that shock absorber has been provided by those big spinning turbines in power plants.
Exactly. But solar and wind don't have those rotating parts. So grid-forming converters can be programmed to mimic that behavior, providing what we call virtual inertia to the grid.
Virtual inertia. It's like tricking the grid into thinking there's still those big spinning turbines out there.
Kind of, yeah.
What about voltage support and frequency regulation?
Yeah, voltage support is all about maintaining a consistent voltage level on the grid.
Okay.
Too many fluctuations can damage equipment and cause blackouts. Grid-forming converters can be placed strategically to provide that voltage support, especially as we add more and more distributed energy resources like rooftop solar.
So they're like mini traffic cops directing the flow of electricity and keeping everything running smoothly. And frequency regulation, that sounds important too.
Yeah, think of it as keeping the heartbeat of the grid steady.
Okay.
The frequency of alternating current AC power needs to stay within a very narrow range, usually 60 hertz in the US. Grid-forming converters can help to maintain that frequency even with the variability of renewables.
Wow, it sounds like these grid-forming converters are the Swiss Army knife of renewable energy integration. They can do it all.
Yeah, they're a truly remarkable technology. And the exciting thing is they're already being used in real-world projects around the world. One notable example is the Dalrymple Battery Project in South Australia, which uses grid-forming converters to provide a range of grid services, including inertia, voltage support, and frequency regulation.
So it's like a giant battery that's also a grid stability guru?
That's a great way to put it. And we're seeing similar projects popping up in other countries as well, so the momentum is definitely building. But before we get carried away with all the tech talk, let's take another pause and come back in part 3 to explore what all this means for the future of the energy system.
All right. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into renewable energy integration. I'm really excited to hear what this future powered by sunshine and wind actually looks like.
You know, we've covered a lot, haven't we? From that global surge in renewables to the challenges of grid integration.
Oh, yeah.
And now we're talking about game-changing technologies like grid-forming converters.
Yeah. So where do we go from here?
Yeah.
I want to talk about the big picture.
Yeah.
What does all this mean for the way we produce and consume energy in the future?
One of the things that I think is most exciting about this transition is this potential to create a more decentralized and democratic energy system.
Okay, I love the sound of that, empowering individuals and communities to take control of their energy.
Exactly. You know, traditionally, our energy system has been very centralized, a handful of large power plants supplying electricity to millions of consumers.
Yeah, the old model.
The old model. But with renewables, we're seeing a shift towards distributed energy resources, like rooftop solar home batteries and even electric vehicles that can feed energy back into the grid.
So instead of relying on those few big players, we're moving towards a system where everyone can participate.
Exactly. And the beauty of this decentralized model is that it's more resilient.
Okay.
If one part of the system goes down, other parts can pick up the slack. It's like having a safety net for our energy supply.
I like that. Having a more robust system.
Exactly.
And I imagine when you combine this kind of distributed infrastructure with smart technologies like those grid-forming converters we talked about, what emerges is a truly intelligent energy ecosystem.
Yeah. Imagine a world where everything is connected and working together seamlessly to balance supply and demand.
In real time.
In real time.
Wow.
It's like the internet of energy.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And this intelligent energy ecosystem has the potential to transform not just how we produce and consume energy, but also how we live and interact with our environment. Okay, so paint me a picture of what this future looks like.
Okay.
How will our daily lives be different?
Okay, let's imagine a typical morning in this future. You wake up and your smart home automatically adjusts the temperature and lighting to your preferences using energy from your rooftop solar panels and home battery.
Sounds pretty comfortable.
Very comfortable. While you're getting ready for work, your electric vehicle is charging up, drawing electricity from the grid during off-peak hours when it's cheaper and cleaner.
Okay. Smart charging. Makes sense.
Smart charging. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
When you leave for work, your car isn't just a mode of transportation. It's also a mobile energy storage unit.
Okay.
If the grid needs a little extra power during the day, your car can actually discharge some of its stored energy back into the grid, earning you a little extra income.
Wow. So it's like turning your car into a mini power plant on wheels.
Exactly.
Like that.
And when you get home in the evening, your rooftop solar panels are generating power for your appliances, keeping your energy bills low and your carbon footprint even lower.
This future sounds amazing.
It's a good future.
So how do we actually get from where we are today to this decentralized, intelligent energy utopia?
It's a big challenge, but it's definitely achievable.
Okay.
We need supportive policies that incentivize clean energy investments, smart regulations that facilitate grid modernization, and engage consumers who are empowered to manage their energy use.
So it sounds like a team effort.
It's a team effort. We all need to work together.
This has been an incredibly insightful deep dive.
It has been.
We've gone from the global boom in renewables to the complexities of grid integration and the potential for a truly revolutionary energy future. It feels like we've only scratched the surface, but it's definitely given me a lot to think about.
I agree. The energy transition is a dynamic process, and there's always more to learn.
Absolutely.
But the key takeaway is that the future of energy is clean, decentralized, and intelligent. And we all have a role to play in making that future a reality.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. I hope you found it as informative and inspiring as I did.
Absolutely. And until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the fascinating world of energy.